I'd start with a poem tonight. It's called New York Subway. The beauty of people in the subway that evening, Saturday, holding the door for whoever was slower or left behind, even with all that Saturday night excitement. And the high school boys from Queens boasting, joking together proudly in their expectations and power. Young, frolicsome bulls. And the three office girls, each strangely beautiful. The Indian with dark skin, and the girl with her hair cut very short and fringed, like Joan at the stake. The corners of her mouth laughing. And the black girl, delicate as a doe, dark brown in pale brown clothes. And the tall woman in the long kaftan, the other day, serene and serious. And the Puerto Rican holding the door for more than 3 minutes for the feeble, crippled, hunched little man who could not raise his head, whose hand I held to help him into the subway car. So we were joined in helping him. And someone seeing us gave up his seat, learning from us what we had learned from each other. That's by a poet named Hilda Morley. And it touches on the beautiful and mysterious diversity this earth is gifted with, wherever we look. We look in nature, we look around at others in our species. And it also touches on the natural, spontaneous compassion. You know, it's a spontaneous, compassionate response that we often see around us. And we read the news, and if it bleeds, it leads. But there's a lot of beauty around us, and a lot of natural compassion that we see, whether it's people holding doors for people, or stopping when there's an accident and helping. It goes on all the time. It doesn't make the news. And you've probably noticed that this practice at its core, at its very core, is a cultivation of, a relearning of, or an enhancement of this natural compassionate response. It's in us. We're growing it, watering it, little by little. So, here we are. You spent a day practicing this meditation thing. And some of you probably have spent a day just watching your mind fly all over like a over-caffeinated squirrel, just leaping and dancing and from one thing to the next. And some of you might have spent the day kind of in a foggy haze, only occasionally crawling out of the goo for a moment of clarity and then sinking back down. You know? But whatever was up for you today, it's all really workable. So there's these energies that arise, and Sharon spoke about them last night. We've got some sleepiness. We've got some restlessness. And there's other energies arising too, and maybe some of you touched into them. A little more restful, restorative, beautiful energies. But all of them, all of these energies that we experience as living creatures, I want to make one of my main points tonight is that even the challenging ones, even these challenging energies that we're confronted with, deserve our acceptance, our understanding, and our appreciation. Appreciation. I'll get into that. It's maybe a little different spin. So tonight, the perspective that I want to offer you on practice, I hope will allow you a little more ease and a little more self-affection. even as you earnestly, ardently, courageously cultivate this heart-mind in your practice. So let's look a little more depth into these energies that they're not only just energies in practice. This is what we deal with when we get born into this world. These challenging energies. So this morning you were given these pretty simple instructions and how to meditate, and a few added things during the day. But as simple as the instructions were, they're not so easy to carry out. These various energies arise. We don't necessarily invite them, but they challenge our ability to come into an awakened, kindly presence. Now in Pali, they have a word. Pali is the language spoken around the time of the Buddha, around the area that he taught. The word for these energies is nivarana. And the literal translation is coverings, or that which veils your ability to see clearly. I personally like to refer to them as challenging energies. The classic word is hindrance. I like to refer to them as challenging energies, or even supportive friends, or limbic lovers. So, more on that later. And as Sharon said last night, they're usually broken out into 5 categories. There's the category of greed or wanting, lust. That's the wanting mind. Then there's the category of aversion, which has under its umbrella anger, fear, hatred, guilt, shame. It's the not wanting mind. Then there's restlessness and worry, the 3rd category. 4th category, as Sharon mentioned, sloth and torpor. Okay, sloth and torpor. Just the sound of the words kind of gives you some indication of what that's about. And then the 5th category, doubt. Okay? And they're described in the Pali Canon in various ways. The Pali Canon is the discourses of the Buddha got written down several hundred years after he lived. He taught for 40-odd years. There's a lot of discourses. And here's from one of those discourses, the Buddha says this. This heart-mind, O monks, is luminous, but it is covered by adventitious visitors. The uninstructed worldling does not understand this as it really is. Therefore, for her, there is no mental development. He goes on. This heart-mind, O monks, is luminous, but it is free from adventitious visitors. The instructed noble disciple understands this as it really is. Therefore, for her, there is mental development. So in that passage, mental development is really referring to the cultivation of both the heart and mind. In Pali, there's one word for heart-mind. It's looked at as the same thing, and unified, and that's citta. So mental development is the cultivation of this heart-mind. It encompasses the ability to gather together the forces of this heart-mind, to bring them together in what's called samadhi, which is a bright, powerful unification of the mind. Those of you that attended Lee Brasington's day-long, etc., we're talking about the development of samadhi onto what's known as the meditative absorptions and jhanas. But it's a continuum. It's just gathering the mind. Samadhi is a better word than concentration, much better. So with that collected, more wieldy heart-mind we can see more clearly into the nature of this creation that we're born into. We can see more clearly into our life, our relationships, and the larger questions. So, at the same time, we're cultivating this more compassionate relationship to everything in this creation. A greater loving intimacy to everything in our world. Another part of that little passage points to something that's interesting. The heart mind is luminous. And so what's aimed at here is that the deep heart mind, by its nature, it's not dark, murky, it's not dull, it's not turbulent. In its essential character, it's light, it's bright. It's filled with a shining, open, non-conceptual intelligence and tranquility. And this natural mind, this luminous natural heart mind, has a knowing quality. And it's unruffled by anything. It has the capacity to hold everything. The good, the bad, the very ugly, the tragic. All these conditions that we deal with in a life at one time or another. But the Buddha said that this naturally unstained heart mind is visited by these adventitious, challenging energies or visitors. But it's important to remember that these energies that visit, that's not who we are. There's not anything inherent in these energies that come up when we're practicing and as we go through life. They pass through, they cause whatever effect they're going to cause. But they're not the inherent fabric of who we are. They're just phenomena appearing and disappearing. Visitors. And we often use the metaphor of the weather. I mean, weather comes at us in all kinds of different ways and in different strengths. These energies are the same way. You know, they could be subtle, as we talked about, some aversions can be subtle today, or they can be powerful, like earthquakes, tsunamis. But here's the interesting thing is they arise. They keep arising in the heart mind. Why? Why do they have to be there? If we have this kind of natural, unstained, luminous heart mind, why do these energies keep arising? The point I want to make tonight, probably the main point, is that they arise because it is this organism loving itself. This wanting, this aversion, this sleepiness, all of them. They are covering this natural, luminescent heart mind. They are visitors, but they're loving visitors. They're mysterious, primal survival energies. What they really are. They come out of the deep subconscious, from the very most primitive parts of our organism. But they're designed, all those energies are designed to help ensure your survival. These visiting energies, at their deepest intention, it's loving care. They're attempting in their own way to provide you with comfort, to avoid pain, protect you, connect you with others in the tribe, and basically guarantee your survival forever. I mean, that's their intention. And these energies, of course, are misguided, oftentimes misguided. They don't have a broad wisdom. They're about survival, protection, And if you follow them, if you become enslaved to these energies, well, your suffering is going to increase. That's just, that's just going to happen. But I found over the years that by holding these energies as more as lovers and allies, albeit misguided lovers and allies, is the way to go with this practice. It's a gentler path. If you hold these energies of wanting, lust, greed, fear, anger, restlessness, sleepiness, doubt, if you hold them as the enemy that must be defeated, it just sets you up for internal strife, internal warfare, fragmentation, and in the worst case, self-loathing. We've got to get rid of them. They're interfering with my spiritual growth in my life, etc. It's like, and as you read and hear from teachers and as you listen to other talks, etc., this practice is about compassion and kindness. Learning to more tenderly bridge that internal separation that we sometimes feel. It's about gentleness, about self-compassion, not self-warfare. A little later, I'll point to where the love is in each of those energies. So let's go a little deeper into each of those five and explore them a bit. I remember when I first learned of these energies, and I really thought I was in a unique position because I thought that I was the person who could actually have all these happening at the same time. So I'd be trying to meditate and I'd be wanting this or that. I didn't have the sports section that I lived off of. I didn't have the food. And I might be wanting, I'd see some woman in the other end of the room and I'd fall in love with this person I didn't even know. And so there'd be this wanting mind. And then the person next to me would be like sniffling and moving around and I'd have this aversion, And then there would be this kind of restlessness that would come out of that. And there'd be the somehow a combination of sleepiness. I'd have this kind of fuzzy feeling, but at the same time I was agitated. And then I would be doubting. What are these practices? They don't make any sense, So the whole thing was up. It was like a multiple challenging energy attack. Maybe some of you had some of that today. But really, it's all workable, even if that was your day. Because as you refine and cultivate your mindfulness, it supports your ability to be with all of these energies. The moment that you notice that you wake up to what energy is up for you, whether it's wanting, aversion, restlessness, doubt, whatever it is, you, at that moment, have changed the relationship to it. It's a qualitatively different relationship. You're no longer lost in it, submerged, kicked around in it. You're not identified with it. That recognition creates a different relationship, just that. It can bring a little spaciousness into the picture, that moment of recognition. That's mindfulness. And as you develop some continuity of mindfulness, some stability of heart-mind, in other words, your samadhi starts to grow, there are, interestingly, 5 elements that make up samadhi, and each of those elements addresses one of these energies and cools it out. So I'd like to go through that with you to show you kind of like under the hood what's going on when you're meditating. You're becoming more mindful. You're growing that capacity. What's really going on under the hood? So the first element of samadhi is aiming and connecting. The Pali word is vitakka. It's just you're aiming the mind and you're connecting with your object. Could be the sound, body, whatever. So just let's aim your mind at the sound of this bell and just connect with it. Do it again. When that moment of connection is there, that bright moment of connection, sleepiness is gone. At least in that moment of connecting. It's wakeful, it's bright. You're not asleep when you're connecting with this sound. Now, of course, there's different levels of sleepiness. All of us are probably underslept. That's the way we roll here in America. Nobody gets enough sleep. Everybody complains, and everybody loads on the caffeine. That's what we do. And then we all have our personal biorhythms. Some of us are more awake in the morning, some in the afternoon, etc. But there's a more interesting type of sleepiness, and that's what's known as sinking mind. That's when there's pretty good steadiness of mind. You're kind of there with whatever your object is. But the energy isn't quite up to speed. It's like brownout conditions. The lights are on, but they're really dim. You know, in the beginning of a retreat, when you sit up here, if we open our eyes and look, sometimes it looks like a sea of bobbleheads. And they're going. And if you open your eyes, you might see the bobbleheads up here. So it's a two-way street. And sometimes you kind of jerk yourself awake. You go, oh, a little whiplash here. Now I'm energized. And other times you just kind of fade back under. You kind of slide back into the ooze. So, and at those times, the vitakka, that connection, it isn't strong enough to hold you with the object. The balance is off between the calming and energetic factors of the mind. Because that's really what meditation is. We're cultivating calm and all the relaxation that we do, working with our parasympathetic nervous system and relax. And we want that alertness. So those two factors make up a meditative state. And when they get a little out of balance, one thing or another happens. If we don't have the alertness, we just kind of fade off. And if we don't have the calm, then we're just anxious. So, but chronic sleepiness in meditation, if you're getting enough sleep, could be just a life out of balance. Or maybe it's resistance to some difficult emotion that needs to be felt through. Loneliness, sorrow, loss, whatever it might be. Another way to look at sloth and torpor is it's simply just not being alive to what's happening right now. In life, it can be kind of waiting for life to begin, waiting for the next jolt of stimulation. Gosh, I've noticed over the last 20 years or so, the amount of violence and explosions in movies, it's like our whole culture is wah, 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 stimulation on top of stimulation. It's no wonder that it's easy to become an experience junkie. And as we meditate, it takes real time to get acclimated to the subtleties of experience. We're not used to it. We're used to being barraged with intense stimulation. And so, it's not surprising that we can tend to doze off in between intense stimulation events. But we're learning to get beyond that. So that's vitakka, aiming and connecting with our object. Now the second element of samadhi, as we're gathering and practicing our mindfulness, gathering these forces, is called vichara. It's the sustaining of the contact. And so we'll let the ring sustain a little bit and just allow your attention to stay with the sustain. the sustaining capacity counteracts doubt. Because if we're connected and sustaining that connection long enough, there's no opportunity for confusion and uncertainty to play out. We're just with our object. Not doubting anything, we're just with our object. But doubt's the most insidious of all the energies. Because when it takes hold, it's always so logical. And of course, skillful doubt is part of discernment. It's an aspect of wisdom. You don't want to live your life like a fool, just believing everything you hear. You know, Madison Avenue would like us to be like that, but we don't want to do that. So skillful discernment is important. But on the other hand, running off on long, elaborate thought streams of doubt just paralyzes us. It kills our energy. So if you're barraged by doubt, you notice how it just kind of your energy just swirls down the drain. The plug gets pulled. Here's a story. A nun came to the abbess complaining that doubt was her primary challenge on the Buddhist path. She had doubt about the path itself, about the teachings, about the teachers, and most importantly about her own ability to succeed in the Buddhist practice. Your problem, said the abbess, is that you don't doubt enough. If you are going to the trouble of doubting, then continue your doubting, but do it more thoroughly. Please, also doubt your doubt. Doubt your doubt. Why not? You don't have to believe every bit of mind debris that flows through. It's like space junk. We don't even know where it comes from. I could be up here and some of Phil's thoughts could be coming through and I'm kind of picking them up. Who knows? They might be wonderful or they could be something else. All right, so that's sustaining our attention. Vichara, vitaka, connecting, vichara, sustaining the attention. 2 parts of samadhi. Then it gets really kind of wonderful after that. The third element of a concentrated or a heart-mind that's developing samadhi, you'll notice, and some of you I know have had this happen today, that there is this arising of pleasant sensations, both physical and mental, sometimes referred to as rapture and joy. That's piti. And when piti starts to arise, some joy in the heart-mind, well, there's not going to be aversion. It cools, at least temporarily, any kind of anger, hatred, guilt, shame, fear. It's not there when you're feeling a kind of rapturous joy begins to come into your practice. And you're just sustaining the mindfulness for a little bit. So there's no aversion. And then right on the heels of this third element, piti, is what is known as sukha, which is a contented sweetness. I always use my dog as an example. Her name is Sukha, and she was named after a period of time watching her. And she has this contented sweetness. She's very easygoing, loves everything, doesn't really need or want a whole lot. So when this sukha has arisen in your mind, this contented sweetness, your thinking settles down, and you notice there's no restlessness or worry at that point. There's no agitation. There's no planning in the mind. You've kind of dropped all that, at least temporarily. There's a feeling of what you might call okayness. When piti and sukha are up, and especially sukha, there's just a contented okayness. The mind and heart just delighted in the present experience, whatever it is. Your breath, looking at a leaf, looking at your sandal, whatever it is, you're just delighted. So, and as the mind and heart becomes even more gathered, the fifth element and final element of samadhi comes into play, and it's called ekaggata. And that's the unification of the mind. And that has the capacity to transform the energy of desire. This one pointedness of mind comes over. You don't want for anything. Nothing is lacking. There's no sense of deficiency. Desire's absent. It's kaput. Ekaggata is synonymous with equanimity. So as samadhi develops, concentration develops, you could say you move from the contented sweetness of sukha into this coolness of ekaggata. At this point, the mind, there's a strong unification of the heart and mind, totally at one with whatever the experience is. And all those challenging energies, all five of them, are relaxed. So we practice this simple mindfulness. Samadhi builds a little bit. And there is this natural relaxation of those energies of wanting, aversion, sleepiness, restlessness, doubt. They get cooled temporarily. But when they're up, they're up. You know. So what are some helpful ways of working with them? You know, they're natural, they come up. There's some general methods that might be helpful to you, and I'll go through a few of them, and you can try them out as you're visited by these energies as you move forward. And those of you that have been coming on Tuesday nights or attending some retreats that we teach, we're partial to this acronym RAIN, R-A-I-N. And so R is recognition, just recognizing what's up. Or you can also see it as the initial receiving of what's happening. So recognizing, kind of receiving whatever the phenomena is. And also recognizing, and I want to add this in there, the supportive intent of that energy. So, for instance, simply we notice that we could use fear or anger. We say anger is up. And oftentimes fear is just below anger. We're angry, we're fearful. They go together oftentimes. So there's that simple recognition of knowing, okay, anger is up. You know, I can feel the fear underneath it, etc. And we can know and receive it with a little extra understanding. That energy is trying to protect us from danger. Anger is a protective energy a lot of the times. It's just a subtle change in perspective. It's not like, oh, it's my anger again, it's my big problem, it's this and that. The organism's trying to protect itself. That's what's happening here. That's why I'm short-tempered. You know. And now, if it's wanting or lust that's up, the softening perspective on that is that it's the organism trying to bring to us what's needed for comfort or for connection. You know, and explore these various wanting energies. A lot of times it is about comfort, or it is about connection. And you have lust for another person. There's some connection. There's desire for connection there. We don't want to be thrown out of the tribe. We want connection. Now, if it's restlessness and worry, a softening perspective on that, for all you planners out there, there's that thinking and planning that's trying to line everything up so that we can survive forever. You know? And if it's sloth and torpor, that waves of sleepiness that seem sometimes unrelated to how much sleep we've had, the softening perspective on that energy is maybe that energy is trying to protect us from feeling something that's difficult to feel, that's hard to feel, something painful. So we go to sleep. It's the organism saying, "Oh, dear, I don't want you to feel something painful. We'll just kind of pull the plug." You know? And if it's doubt that's arisen, with a softened perspective about doubt, we don't want to be fooled by something. We don't want to be fooled by something. So I'm going to doubt. It's better to paralyze the system than get fooled. So there's this kind of loving offering in these 5 energies for each of them. There's a softening perspective that we can have on them. They don't have to be the enemy that we have to root out and fight against. So that's the R. We recognize, we receive. And then there's the A in the acronym RAIN. Accepting, allowing what is happening. And I want to add appreciating. We see this. I appreciate this fear, this anger. Thank you, but maybe I'm a little wiser. I'm not going to act out on it. But I appreciate the intent of the organism to care for me in that way. So with the A, we're not pushing away, not grasping on. We're just not interfering. It's a radical non-interference with the flow of this body-mind process. We're not resisting our experience. And we're appreciating these energies. They're trying to do things for us. Now the I, becoming intimate with the experience, investigating the experience, turn towards it, feel it fully, takes courage. Sometimes we want to duck away. But when we explore it, we look into it, we watch it grow, flower, and disappear without pushing or pulling on it. When we become intimate with an experience, we're really becoming intimate with the phenomena of impermanence, which is foundational to this creation. The insubstantiality of all phenomena and the impersonal nature of it. It's not you, it's just stuff coming and going. It arises and passes. So that's the I, the investigation, becoming intimate with the experience. And finally the N, the non-identification, non-ownership. It's really the wisdom understanding. It's the wisdom understanding of the selfless nature of everything driven by causes and conditions. And that it's the wisdom understanding that an aspect of being human is experiencing greed, anger, fear, worry, doubt, etc. And the wisdom understanding is that these energies are trying to protect us. And they're just passing phenomena. They're rolling on. They're not mine. So the N, non-identified. That's our razor's edge of practice. Is it possible to experience fully sometimes very powerful emotions and phenomena and be completely embodied in them, but not identified? That's the challenge. It's our challenge for healing and for living this life. A couple subtle changes have been helpful to me over the years in relating to these energies. And one is cultivating the habit of withdrawing my energy from the object and placing the attention on my own experience. Maybe I can explain it with an example. Okay, I'm doing some work. I've got a deadline coming up. I got to give a talk, or I have to write something, or I have to do something. I'm working on the computer. Without thinking, I find myself kind of jumping off to my favorite websites. Well, I'll check this sports column or this, or I'll check the news. I'll be on the Guardian or the Daily Beast or whatever catches my fancy that day. I have my favorite sites. But if I become aware of what I'm doing, then it can get interesting. Because now there's other possibilities. I have some choices. If I withdraw my attention from the object that I'm wanting, the particular website, and I often refer to them as comfort sites, withdraw that, okay, what's going on in here? And in a situation like that, there might be some anxiety. Some low-level anxiety that's begun to creep in, and before I know it, I'm off grabbing at some comfort. So there I have a little challenge. Can I be more directly with my core experience, which is this little bit of anxiety that's coming up? Can I feel it fully? Can I feel the agitation that goes with that? Or do I have to run away? At least I have a choice. Gee, I'm agitated. These sites make me feel good. I'll read the next article on the Red Sox or whatever it is. Yeah. Or can I go a little deeper and feel the pangs of that anxiety and really, really look into that anxiety, that fear that's there, that primitive sense of, look, there's anxiety here because I need to be successful. I don't want to be kicked out of the tribe. I want to get this done and be included. It's at that kind of level. And that anxious energy under there really is kind of loving me in a way, trying to get me to maybe do something to remain included in the tribe. It's irrational. My life, of course, is not threatened. It doesn't matter. But those old survival energies that manifest themselves, they just keep rocking on. We'll feel them in all their different forms. So when I'm able to withdraw my energy from those internet comfort sites and place it directly on my experience, I do have some choices there. Another strategy for these energies is utilizing what I call spaciousness. All right, so I'm recognizing that, using the same example, I'm recognizing there's some anxiety, performance anxiety about getting something done and getting it out on time, etc. So I can feel fully into that, bring my attention there, and I can also toggle back and forth and feel into the spaciousness around me, the vastness of space, that within that, this anxiety is happening. It's an interesting way to toggle back and forth. So there's different ways we can play. It's kind of like playing with the camera angle. You can feel the movements of anxiety for some moments and then feel into the spaciousness around us. that spaciousness that's going on, solar systems being born and dying, it's an awareness, it's a vastness that has a knowing quality. And no matter how big the anxiety or the fear or the grief gets, it can be held in this spaciousness if we're attuned to it back and forth. So let's do a little reflection, a short reflection. We'll use one of these techniques. So close your eyes. Just get yourself comfortable. Take a few breaths, a few deep breaths. So pick out something in your life that you want. Find something that you want, you lust after. Is it the iPhone 6 or that new Prius or the Cadillac Escalade with the heavily tinted windows, whatever it might be. Or that person. Could be a person. You know. George Clooney is off the market, but you could still want him. You know. Lady Gaga, whatever lights your fire. So now see your chosen object of wanting in great detail, as if you could touch it, feel it, smell it. Let all your senses play at this. Spend some moments just indulging in wanting. Oh, I want this. This would be great. Wow, what an improvement in my life. Really feel into it as best you can. Now, withdraw your energy from that object and just feel, see if it's possible to feel what wanting is like in the body. Notice how it changes. There's an arc of wanting. You know, sometimes it'll fade very quickly. Sometimes it will increase. So just experiencing it directly inside. No attention on the object. So now let's go back to the object. Bring your attention back to that object that you really want. Just really get into it again. And again, feel what it's like inside yourself. Withdraw from that object. Now feeling it as it is, and also feeling the space around yourself. That calm, accepting space that can handle all your wanting with equanimity. Okay, open your eyes. So maybe you got a little sense, maybe you didn't. But those are two techniques for kind of working with these energies. But my favorite conceptualization, I think, of how to work with the experience of life, basically, is taught by Chinul, the 12th century Korean Zen master. He calls it tracing back the radiance. I try to get it into every retreat I teach, because I really like it. And it parallels rain very well. He taught his students, even back then, look, you have to start where you are. Don't try to phony it up in your heart, mind. Whatever's there, it can be incredible hatred, incredible lust, whatever. Just start where you are. Allow it to be. Receive the sensations as they come. Receive the emotions just as they are. Embrace them kindly, not interfering. And whatever you start with, stay with it. And if you stay with it in an open, kindly way, it will change. It'll change because everything in nature changes. That's just the law of nature. It will change. It may intensify for a while. It may show you something else. And so you stay with that. Patiently, with equanimity. So you move into the next configuration. And then you move into the next configuration. You're just watching it with patience, watching it play out. And if the same patient acceptance is applied long enough, whatever the clouds are will lift. And that reveals the clear, luminous, radiant mind. The clear, luminous, radiant mind that's always been there. Now, my challenging energy du jour has always been planning. It just is. And basically that's the protection of and the desire for this organism to live forever. Anybody ever plan excessively here? I mean, come on. And so, again, it's one of those, if I withdraw from what I'm planning on, I get into the body, I'll find some anxiety, a little bit of anxiety. And if I sit with it, as Shanul says, patiently, with equanimity, I can begin to maybe sense the fear underneath that anxiety. It's a little more powerful and pervasive. And if I sit with that, sometimes it will kind of open to this more primal experience of this desire and clutching for existence. It's somewhere feeling threatened. But if I sit with that long enough and patiently enough, and the conditions are right, it does dissolve into a luminosity. A luminous heart-mind, kind of tinged with this loving sensibility. It gets traced back, tracing back the radiance one step at a time. That's where the patience comes in this practice. And when we can go through a cycle or a couple cycles of that, we start developing confidence. I can do this. Other times, sometimes, we start to learn the pathways back, and these clouds can lift quickly. And other times they don't lift at all. And some days, and for some periods of time, the coverings are too dark to penetrate. It's just the way it is. Tomorrow's another day. We get another chance. Ajahn Chah, the legendary Thai forest teacher, he gives his kind of flavor of tracing back the radiance as he muses on the nature of suffering. And he says this: there are two kinds of suffering. The suffering that leads to more suffering, and the suffering which leads to the end of suffering. The first is the pain of grasping after fleeting pleasures and aversion for the unpleasant. The continued struggle of most people day after day. The second is the suffering which comes when you allow yourself to feel fully the constant change of experience. Pleasure, pain, joy, and anger. feeling them without fear or withdrawal. The suffering of our experience leads to inner fearlessness and peace. I'll read that part again. The second is the suffering which comes when you allow yourself to feel fully the constant change of experience, pleasure, pain, joy, and anger, without fear or withdrawal. The suffering of our experience leads to inner fearlessness and peace. Another short little story. One of the monastery's old monks had become a hermit, living a 2.5-day hike over difficult mountain paths. Many visitors made the trek to receive advice and teachings from the old wise monk. He was reputed to know just what each visitor needed. Prior to giving instructions, the hermit asked the visitor to ask that the visitor promise not to tell anyone what advice or instruction he or she received. After the promise was made, the hermit would simply say, "What are you not willing to pay attention to?" This was the only thing he would ever say to those seeking his help. Many visitors were perplexed by this question, but by the time they walked the 2.5 days out of the mountains, they invariably would praise the hermit for giving them just the instruction they needed to hear. Well, what are you not willing to pay attention to? So tonight I offered a brief look at some of these challenging energies that you encounter in life and in cultivating your spiritual practice. And maybe for some of you I offered a slightly new perspective on them, a softer, self-compassionate appreciation for the deepest intention of these energies, the limbic love of the organism for itself. The energies arising to protect you, bring you comfort, connect you. They want to keep you around for a long time. You could say it's really those energies are creation loving itself. It's creation loving itself. Oh, and they're misguided at times, and if followed, they'll create havoc. But the intention really is sweet of these energies. And I suggested a few practical ways of working with them when they come up. RAIN being one, the acronym, and another, withdrawing the mind from the object, directly feeling that experience. The conscious act of experiencing the space around the phenomena that's up and erupting. Resting and getting to know a spaciousness that's so vast, so steady, so receptive, that it really can allow, receive, and hold anything. Any sensation, any emotion, any thought. And as they arise and pass and we spend time with them, we develop a confidence. And also highlighted the Buddha's articulation of the luminous heart-mind. It's our birthright. And sometimes it's not available to you, okay? It gets covered by these intermittent energies. But in its deepest essential character, you all have access to this radiant heart-mind. That radiant heart-mind that has a knowing quality, a deep tranquility, and is not ruffled by anything that happens. And as you trace back the radiance, over and over, build your confidence, you really come to see you're already there. This radiance is with you all the time, and I hope over time in your practice you get glimpses of this. Your practice really is just a variety of ways to remind you of this radiance and to help you kind of re-navigate back to it. So I'll close with just a few words from Walt Whitman's Song to Myself. It's a song. It's actually a song for the open road. Pausing, searching, receiving, contemplating, gently, but with undeniable will, divesting myself of the holds that would hold me. I inhale great draughts of space. The east and the west are mine, and the north and the south are mine. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness. So let's just sit together for a few moments. Pausing, searching, receiving, contemplating, gently, but with undeniable will, divesting myself of the holds that would hold me. I inhale great draughts of space. The east and the west are mine, and the north and the south are mine. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness.